Huawei is very dangerous.
Rarely does a country go to war with a private company.
We have met the enemy, and it is Huawei.
We're not going to do business with Huawei.
Huawei represents a national security risk.
But is this really about Huawei, or is it something bigger than
900 million devices? That's how many gadgets now run on an operating system that didn't even exist 5 years ago. While most of the world was betting on Huawei's collapse after losing Google, something extraordinary happened instead. The Chinese tech giant didn't just survive being cut off from Android and Google services, they built an entirely new digital universe that's now threatening to reshape the global technology landscape. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow, and every Google service vanishes from your phone. No Gmail, no YouTube, no Google Maps, no Play Store. For most of us, that would be a digital catastrophe. But for nearly 1 billion users worldwide, that's exactly the reality they're embracing, and they're not looking back. The story begins in May 2019, when the Trump administration dropped what many called a nuclear bomb on Huawei. Overnight, the company lost access to Google's Android operating system and all its services. Tech analysts worldwide wrote Huawei's obituary. They'll be dead within 2 years, proclaimed one prominent Silicon Valley investor. No company can survive without Google's ecosystem, declared another. They were all wrong. What happened next defied every prediction. Instead of crumbling, Huawei did something that seemed impossible. They built their own operating system from scratch. Not just a cheap Android knockoff, but a completely new platform designed to work seamlessly across phones, tablets, watches, TVs, and even cars. They called it HarmonyOS, and by early 2025, it's become the fastest-growing operating system in tech history. The numbers are staggering. In 2024 alone, Huawei's revenue surged past 860 billion yuan. That's over $118 billion, marking a 22% jump from the previous year. This isn't just recovery, it's the company's fastest growth rate in nearly a decade. In China's smartphone market, Huawei rocketed from 4th place to 2nd, with shipments exploding by 37%, while Apple's sales dropped 17% in the same period. But here's where it gets really interesting. The latest version, HarmonyOS 6, isn't just competing with Android. It's pioneering features that Google is scrambling to match. The system now includes advanced AI agents that can automate complex tasks without users needing any programming knowledge. Imagine telling your phone to book your entire vacation, and it handles everything from flights to restaurant reservations, learning your preferences along the way. We're not trying to copy anyone, explains Dr. Chen Wei, a senior architect who worked on HarmonyOS development. We asked ourselves a simple question. If we could redesign mobile computing from the ground up, knowing everything we know today, what would we build? The answer wasn't Android. The Mate 60 Pro smartphone became the symbol of this transformation. When it launched in 2023, Western experts were stunned. Despite sanctions blocking access to advanced chip-making technology, Huawei had somehow created a phone with 5G-like speeds using their homegrown Kirin 9100 processor. Sales exploded so quickly that stores couldn't keep them in stock. Young Chinese professionals started calling it the Patriot phone, a device that proved China didn't need Western technology to innovate. This momentum accelerated with the Mate 70 series. These aren't just phones. They're showcases of what's possible when a company is forced to reimagine everything. The devices feature 100-watt fast charging that can power up a dead battery in minutes, foldable screens that feel like magic, and AI capabilities that make Siri look ancient. Most remarkably, they often cost less than comparable Google Pixel or Samsung devices. The ecosystem extends far beyond smartphones. In May 2025, Huawei dropped another bombshell. Laptops running HarmonyOS. The MateBook Fold features an 18-inch OLED screen that folds like a book, with no physical keyboard needed. The MateBook Pro maintains a traditional design, but runs entirely on Huawei's software, marking the company's direct challenge to Windows and Mac OS. What we're witnessing is unprecedented in tech history, notes technology strategist Maria Rodriguez from her office in Barcelona. A company completely cut off from the Western tech stack, not only surviving but building something that millions of people actually prefer. It's forcing us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about technology monopolies. The app situation tells another remarkable story. When Google Play became unavailable, pessimists predicted users would abandon Huawei phones in droves. Instead, Huawei's app gallery now serves 580 million monthly active users. Major developers are racing to ensure their apps work perfectly on HarmonyOS. With over 50 AI-powered applications from partners like Weibo and Ximalaya already integrated into the system. But perhaps the most significant development is happening in cloud computing and artificial intelligence. Huawei unveiled their Pangu 5.5 AI models, specifically designed for industrial applications in medicine, finance, and manufacturing. Their Cloud Matrix 384 infrastructure features 384 Ascend neural processing units working in Harmony, a setup that rivals anything from Google or Amazon. The implications ripple far beyond consumer gadgets. Businesses across Asia are increasingly choosing Huawei's cloud services over Western alternatives, citing better local support, competitive pricing, and crucially, data that stays within their borders. For companies worried about US surveillance or sudden sanctions, Huawei offers something Google cannot: independence from American political decisions. The sanctions didn't just push Huawei to create alternatives, they forced the company to fundamentally rethink how technology should work. Take their latest breakthrough, a revolutionary approach to device interconnection that makes Apple's ecosystem look closed off by comparison. With HarmonyOS, your phone can instantly become your laptop's touchpad, your tablet transforms into a second monitor, and your smartwatch controls your TV, all without any setup or configuration. This seamless integration caught Silicon Valley completely off guard. We spent years telling ourselves that our walled gardens were features, not limitations, admits a former Google executive who requested anonymity. Huawei proved that when you design an ecosystem from scratch in 2025, you don't need those walls at all. The geopolitical tremors from Huawei's resurgence extend far beyond technology circles. When the European Union announced in March 2025 that it was considering HarmonyOS devices for government procurement contracts, Washington's response was swift and telling. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken called it a fundamental threat to transatlantic digital security, while Beijing celebrated what they termed the inevitable recognition of technological sovereignty. The shift becomes even more pronounced when you examine the numbers flowing out of Southeast Asia. In Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, HarmonyOS adoption rates jumped 340% in the first quarter of 2025. Local telecommunications companies report that customers actively request Huawei devices, not despite the Google restrictions, but because of the privacy implications they represent. This preference for digital independence is reshaping entire markets. Vietnam's largest electronics retailer, FPT Shop, reports that 60% of their premium smartphone sales now come from HarmonyOS devices. The Philippines followed suit when their Department of Information and Communications Technology announced pilot programs using Huawei's cloud infrastructure for government services, citing cost savings of nearly 40% compared to Amazon Web Services. The automotive industry presents perhaps the most dramatic example of Huawei's expanding influence. Their collaboration with Chinese automaker Chery resulted in the Luxeed S7, an electric sedan where HarmonyOS controls everything from navigation to climate systems. The vehicle's AI can predict traffic patterns, automatically adjust suspension based on road conditions, and even communicate with smart city infrastructure to optimize routes in real time. Sales exceeded 150,000 units in its first 6 months, with waiting lists stretching into 2026. Traditional car companies are panicking, observes automotive analyst Dr. James Morrison from his research facility in Detroit. Tesla spent years building their software advantage, and suddenly Chinese manufacturers with HarmonyOS are delivering features that make Tesla look outdated. The integration is so seamless that driving anything else feels primitive. The education sector reveals another dimension of this technological transformation. Universities across Africa and Latin America are implementing HarmonyOS-based learning systems that cost 70% less than equivalent Western solutions. In Kenya, the University of Nairobi deployed Huawei's education cloud platform to serve 84,000 students remotely. Professor Grace Munyua, who oversaw the implementation, notes that students can access the same computational resources whether they're in Nairobi or rural villages. That level of democratization simply wasn't possible with previous systems. Healthcare applications showcase HarmonyOS's most profound impact. Huawei's medical AI, running on their proprietary chips, can analyze CT scans 300% faster than comparable Western systems. Rural hospitals in Brazil are using HarmonyOS tablets connected to Huawei's cloud infrastructure to provide diagnostic services that previously required trips to major cities. Dr. Carlos Mendoza from São Paulo's Hospital das Clínicas reports that patients receive expert-level diagnostic recommendations within minutes, regardless of their location. The system learns from every case, becoming more accurate with each diagnosis. The response from Silicon Valley has been increasingly desperate. Google announced Project Unity in late 2024, attempting to rebuild Android's global appeal with enhanced AI features and cross-device integration. Apple accelerated their services expansion into emerging markets, offering significant discounts and local payment options. Amazon Web Services launched aggressive pricing campaigns targeting the exact regions where Huawei's cloud services were gaining traction.
Huawei is very dangerous.
Rarely does a country go to war with a private company.
We have met the enemy, and it is Huawei.
We're not going to do business with Huawei.
Huawei represents a national security risk.
But is this really about Huawei, or is it something bigger than
Reports this morning that Chinese tech company Huawei is ramping up to test its newest and most powerful AI chip, which would be a competitor to chips made by NVIDIA. Christina Partsinevel is here with that story to evaluate the threat. Hi, Christina.
The satellite images were unmistakable. Deep in Shenzhen's Guanlan district, construction crews worked around the clock, erecting massive structures that would soon house some of the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment. This wasn't just another factory. It was Huawei's declaration of technological independence, and it was happening right under the nose of American sanctions. The discovery sent shockwaves through Washington. For years, U.S. policymakers had believed that cutting Huawei off from advanced chip technology would cripple the Chinese tech giant. Instead, they were watching the birth of something unprecedented, a complete semiconductor ecosystem built from scratch, designed to challenge the very foundations of American technological dominance. Inside the sprawling complex, 3 interconnected facilities were taking shape. The centerpiece was Huawei's own manufacturing plant, where engineers were preparing to produce 7-nanometer chips, the kind of advanced processors that power modern smartphones and artificial intelligence systems. This wasn't supposed to be possible. When the U.S. blocked Huawei's access to Taiwan's TSMC and other foreign chip manufacturers, experts predicted it would take China at least a decade to catch up. They were wrong. What we're witnessing is nothing short of a technological miracle, observed Dr. James Chen, a semiconductor industry veteran who spent 20 years at Intel before becoming an independent analyst. Huawei has compressed what should have been 15 years of development into less than 3. The implications are staggering. The numbers backed up his assessment. By early 2025, Huawei had already achieved a 40% production yield on its Ascend 910C AI processors, nearly double what they managed just 12 months earlier. This wasn't just incremental progress. It was a quantum leap that put profitable mass production within reach. The company was planning to manufacture 100,000 units within the year, each one a testament to China's growing technological prowess. But Huawei wasn't working alone. Adjacent to their main facility, 2 strategic partners were setting up shop. Skycarrier, a company that emerged from Huawei's own research laboratories, was installing equipment to produce deep ultraviolet lithography machines, the complex tools needed to etch circuits onto silicon wafers. Next door, Shuai was preparing to manufacture memory chips that would feed directly into Huawei's supply chain. The arrangement was clever, perhaps too clever. Officially, these were independent companies. In reality, industry insiders knew better. Personnel moved freely between the facilities. Technology was shared. Funding flowed from the same government-backed investment vehicles. It was a shell game designed to circumvent sanctions while building a fully integrated semiconductor supply chain. The Americans thought they could strangle us with sanctions, a senior Huawei engineer confided during an industry conference in Shanghai. Instead, they forced us to innovate. Every restriction became a motivation. Every closed door pushed us to build our own. The scale of Huawei's ambition became even clearer when satellite imagery revealed another massive construction project near Shanghai. Here, the company was investing $1.66 billion in a research and development center that would span an area equivalent to 224 football fields. With capacity for 35,000 personnel, it would become one of the largest technology research facilities on the planet. This wasn't just about catching up anymore. Huawei was positioning itself to leapfrog the competition entirely. The Cloud Matrix 384, their latest AI chip cluster, integrated 3hit84 Ascend processors using cutting-edge optical technology. Performance tests showed it outpaced NVIDIA's comparable systems by 67%, while offering triple the memory capacity. Yes, it consumed more power and the software wasn't as mature, but for Chinese companies cut off from NVIDIA's products, it offered something priceless, an alternative. The ripple effects were already visible across China's tech sector. Since 2019, Huawei's investment arm, Hubble, had poured money into over 60 semiconductor companies. From carbon nanotube wafer specialists to packaging material producers, they were methodically building every link in the supply chain. Each investment was a brick in the wall of technological self-sufficiency. People don't understand the psychology at play here, explained Professor Liu Wei from Tsinghua University's School of Integrated Circuits. For decades, China accepted its role as the world's factory, assembling products designed elsewhere. The sanctions changed everything. They transformed semiconductor independence from an economic goal into a matter of national pride. The transformation was remarkable. Where once Chinese companies competed for access to foreign technology, they now race to develop domestic alternatives. SMIC, China's largest chip manufacturer, worked hand-in-hand with Huawei to refine production processes. SMI provided engineering support. Dozens of smaller firms contributed specialized components and materials. Yet challenges remained formidable. The U.S. government, recognizing the threat, had already added Sci-Carrier and Shuai to its entity list, citing concerns about military applications. This move blocked American companies from supplying any technology to these firms, forcing them to source everything from Europe, Japan, or domestically. More critically, semiconductor manufacturing remained one of the most complex industrial processes ever devised. A single advanced chip required hundreds of steps, each demanding extraordinary precision. One industry joke held that there were only 3 things in the universe that required nanometer-level accuracy: semiconductor manufacturing, DNA replication, and the ego of a semiconductor CEO. Huawei's relative inexperience showed in subtle ways. Their chips, while functional, consumed more power than comparable Western designs. Software optimization lagged behind hardware development. The ecosystem, impressive as it was, still had gaps that would take years to fill. But perhaps the most significant impact wasn't technological, it was psychological. For decades, the global semiconductor industry had operated on the assumption that no single country could build a complete supply chain. The costs were too high, the expertise too specialized, the equipment too complex. Huawei was proving that assumption wrong, and in doing so, reshaping how nations thought about technological sovereignty. We're entering a new era, predicted Sarah Martinez, a supply chain expert who advised Fortune 500 companies on semiconductor strategy. The old model of global specialization is breaking down. Countries are realizing that in critical technologies, independence matters more than efficiency. The evidence was mounting daily. European nations were launching their own chip initiatives. India was courting semiconductor manufacturers with massive subsidies. Even small countries were wondering if they needed domestic chip production capabilities. The age of technological interdependence was giving way to an era of strategic autonomy. The implications rippled far beyond China's borders as intelligence agencies in Washington began piecing together the true scope of what they were witnessing. By mid-2024, classified briefings painted a stark picture. Huawei wasn't just building a semiconductor facility, they were constructing the backbone of what analysts termed Technology Cold War 2.0. The timing couldn't have been more significant. Just as American policymakers celebrated what they believed was a successful containment strategy, Huawei's breakthrough chips were quietly powering a revolution in Chinese artificial intelligence capabilities. The Ascend 910C processors weren't merely matching Western performance metrics. In specific applications, they were exceeding them. Chinese autonomous vehicle companies reported 23% faster object recognition speeds compared to systems running on NVIDIA hardware. Facial recognition systems powered by Huawei's chips achieved accuracy rates that made even privacy advocates nervous. "What keeps me awake at night isn't just that they caught up," confided a former Pentagon technology advisor who requested anonymity. "It's the speed at which they're now pulling ahead in targeted applications. We're watching decades of American technological leadership evaporate in real time." The economic ramifications were equally staggering. Within 18 months of achieving viable production yields, Huawei had already secured orders worth $12 billion from domestic Chinese companies desperate for chip independence. Telecommunications giant ZTE placed the largest single order, 2.3 million processors for their next-generation 5G infrastructure. Alibaba's cloud division committed to purchasing every Ascend chip Huawei could manufacture through 2026. The message was clear. China's tech ecosystem was rallying around homegrown alternatives with unprecedented enthusiasm. But perhaps the most unsettling development for Western observers was the emergence of what industry insiders dubbed reverse sanctions. Chinese companies that had previously relied on American semiconductors were now voluntarily switching to domestic alternatives, even when foreign chips remained available. The psychological shift was profound. Technological nationalism had replaced pure economic calculation. Beijing quietly encouraged this transition through a web of incentives that made choosing Chinese chips irresistible. Companies that committed to domestic processors received preferential treatment in government contracts, faster regulatory approvals, and access to state-backed financing. The carrot and stick approach was working. By early 2025, over 400 Chinese technology firms had pledged to transition away from American semiconductors within 3 years. The human cost was becoming apparent in Silicon Valley, where thousands of engineers faced an uncomfortable reality. The Chinese market that had generated billions in revenue was systematically closing itself off. NVIDIA's stock price reflected investor anxiety, as analysts calculated that losing access to Chinese customers could slash the company's revenue by 35%. Intel faced similar pressures as server manufacturers in China increasingly turned to domestic alternatives. "We built our entire industry on the assumption that technology would remain global," explained Dr. Amanda Foster, a technology policy researcher at Stanford. Huawei's success has shattered that assumption. "We're moving toward a world where technological ecosystems align with geopolitical blocks." The transformation was most visible in China's sprawling technology hubs. In Shenzhen alone, over 200 companies had relocated operations to be closer to Huawei's semiconductor complex. Component manufacturers, software developers, and system integrators were creating an integrated supply chain that operated independently of Western technology. The cluster effect was accelerating innovation in ways that surprised even Chinese officials.
Huawei is very dangerous.
Rarely does a country go to war with a private company.
We have met the enemy, and it is Huawei.
We're not going to do business with Huawei.
Huawei represents a national security risk.
But is this really about Huawei, or is it something bigger than?
Chinese researchers have achieved a significant milestone in the race for semiconductor supremacy. Led by Lin Nan, a team from the Chinese Academy of Sciences Shanghai Institute of Optics and Fine Mechanics has developed an extreme ultraviolet EUV light source platform that operates at internationally competitive parameters. This breakthrough marks a pivotal step toward China's self-sufficiency in producing advanced chips, sending shockwaves through the global semiconductor industry. The stakes couldn't be higher. EUV lithography is the key to unlocking the next generation of semiconductors, enabling the fabrication of chips with nodes below 7 nanometers. These cutting-edge chips promise unparalleled power and efficiency, forming the backbone of everything from smartphones to supercomputers. Until now, only one company in the world, Dutch giant ASML, possessed the technology to manufacture EUV machines. But with US-led export restrictions barring ASML from selling its most advanced models to China since 2019, the country has been left scrambling to develop its own alternatives. Enter Lin Nan and his team of trailblazing researchers. Details of their EUV platform remain closely guarded, but insiders suggest it could be a game-changer. The implications are profound. China currently accounts for over 40% of ASML's global sales, underscoring the country's critical role in the semiconductor supply chain. But with each passing year, the noose of export controls tightens further. In September 2023, under intense pressure from the US, the Dutch government imposed even stricter limitations on the lithography machines available to Chinese chipmakers. The move sparked a frenzied rush of orders from China as companies raced to secure equipment before the restrictions took hold. The stakes extend far beyond the realm of technology. As the United States ramps up its efforts to constrain China's access to advanced computing and semiconductor manufacturing capabilities, the geopolitical landscape grows increasingly complex. Effective October 7, 2022, a sweeping set of export controls aim to curtail China's ability to obtain, develop, and manufacture cutting-edge semiconductor technology. From AI chips to design tools, the measures seek to hamstring China's progress in critical sectors. For companies like ASML, caught in the crosshairs of this technological arms race, the path forward is fraught with uncertainty. CEO Christophe Fouquet has openly voiced his concerns about the mounting pressure from the United States, anticipating further restrictions on the horizon. While ASML expects to weather the storm in the short term, with China still accounting for around 20% of its projected sales in 2025, as China pours resources into developing domestic alternatives, the global semiconductor supply chain is poised for a seismic reconfiguration. In the near term, export restrictions may lead to disruptions and increased costs for manufacturers worldwide. But if China succeeds in its quest for self-sufficiency, it could fundamentally reshape market dynamics, eroding the dominance of established players like ASML. The road ahead is long and arduous. Translating laboratory breakthroughs into commercially viable, mass production-ready systems is a monumental challenge. It will require sustained investment, unwavering determination, and a healthy dose of ingenuity. But if there's one thing China has proven time and again, it's the ability to mobilize resources and talent on an unparalleled scale. As the world watches with bated breath, one thing is clear. The semiconductor industry is at an inflection point. The outcomes of China's self-sufficiency drive will reverberate far beyond the confines of the clean room, influencing everything from the balance of technological power to the future of global trade. In this high-stakes game of geopolitical chess, every move carries profound consequences. The question is, who will emerge victorious in the battle for the Silicon frontier? The tech world stands breathless as Chinese telecommunications titan Huawei prepares to unleash its revolutionary Ascend 9 AI chip into global markets next month. This jaw-dropping development has already sent NVIDIA, America's undisputed AI chip champion, reeling, with an eye-watering $127 billion vanishing from its market value in just 24 hours. The question on everyone's mind: is this the beginning of the end for America's semiconductor supremacy? The announcement couldn't have come at a worse time for NVIDIA, which had recently been barred from selling its flagship H100 chip to Chinese customers due to tightening U.S. export controls. The Trump administration's message was clear. America intended to maintain its chokehold on advanced AI computing power in China. But Huawei had a surprise in store, a homegrown alternative that not only rivals, but in some aspects. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is that Huawei accomplished this feat while cut off from the advanced manufacturing technologies that NVIDIA relies on.